Hey, Bills Mafia. We know there's only one topic every day. All Bills, all the time. And now Matt Bovee and Sal Capaccio are going really deep, talking Bills all year long, because it's always game day in Buffalo.
Welcome to NFL Combine Week. Welcome to the NFL Combine. Sal Capaccio here, Matt Bovee there. It's always game day in Buffalo. And here we are already, Combine time, Matt. And first of all, I want to say thank you for, by the way, go Orange. Look at that. We got a Syracuse guy in the house doing the 40-yard dash right near me. Go Orange. I love it. I got guys, look at it. Just so everybody knows, I'm in a hallway where guys are practicing the 40-yard dash before they actually go out to, I don't know which Syracuse player that is. There are a few guys at the Combine here from Syracuse, but he literally just ran by me. Matt, thank you so much for holding the fort down while I was on vacation. I know you did a pod with the Buffalo Plus gang. Really great. So thanks a lot.
Of course. You got a nice tan. I'm jealous of the tan. You look good.
The sunshine, buddy.
And the pink shirt makes the tan pop. If you're watching the video, you'll know what we're talking about. If you're listening to the audio, just know that Sal is much tanner than I am right now.
Listen, so I will just share one travel story with you because the trip was amazing. We love going on cruises. The food is great. It's anytime you want to eat. We went to Belize and Cozumel and Costa Maya. Went to the Mayan ruins, climbed it with my son at one of the Mayan ruins you could climb. It was amazing. We swam with dolphins. He actually grabbed the fins of the dolphin and was riding. It was incredible. But on the way down, we had a layover in Atlanta, and we were supposed to leave at like 7 at night to get to Miami for the cruise the next day. And the flight kept getting delayed because the flight was coming up, getting delayed, and we kept being told later and later. And then finally they said, okay, should be here about 1 o'clock and then we're going to board. Okay, well, that stinks in the morning. Well, that changed to 1:30. And then finally they said, okay, we should be good about 2 o'clock. And then the plane did land and they said, sorry, the pilot timed out. You're going to leave at 8 in the next morning. We had to sleep on the floor at the airport. And I got to tell you, I'm not even going to say the airline because I don't want to do that here. But all we got was like a $25 voucher for like breakfast each the next day.
Yeah, it stinks. Well, if you're in Atlanta,
and I'm like, what?
Yeah, if you're in Atlanta, I could probably guess the airline, so you don't have to say it. That stinks. There are times when this is what now you realize it. You do realize this, but this is the difference between when you get to travel on the charter and when I am playing planes, trains, and automobiles after Bills games and trying to figure out how the heck I'm getting back to Buffalo.
Yeah, I hear you. And listen, it's fine for me. Like it's part of an adventure. I told my wife and son, hey, it's an adventure. We're going out. We're going to be fine. We'll get there, sleep on the floor. It just kind of stunk that I wish I would have known earlier. You know what I mean? And there was no, you want to go to a hotel or something. But either way, it worked out well. We had a great trip. So I'm really glad that happened. I can share more about it, but we got to get to everything that Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott said. Sean McDermott spoke Monday. Brandon Beane spoke today. It is Tuesday here at the NFL Combine. And just before we got Brandon Beane, big news from the Buffalo Bills, Matt.
Yeah, Khalil Shakir signs a 4-year contract extension. That keeps him in Buffalo through 2029. The reported money on the deal, it's been out there from Adam Schefter and from Ian Rappaport, a couple of the other big insiders in the league. It looks like at maximum, it's about a $60 million deal over the course of the extension, $32 million guaranteed. So if you look at the absolute highest that could be, it would be about $15 million a year, a little bit more than $15 million a year. The one thing I will say to that is that the initial money that whenever we see these deals thrown out is almost always from the agents because they want to make their client look like they got the biggest payday humanly possible. So if it truly is $15 million a year, it's kind of exactly what I would expect for Khalil Shakir. But usually it's a little less than that. Usually the numbers are a little bit smaller. So I already really like the deal. I think it's a good value for the player. But I think I'm going to really like it when we see a little bit more of the contract in the next couple of days. Good player. He's only 25 years old. Very reliable. Plays well in big moments. Kind of feels like a no-brainer for the Bills. And I think both sides win here.
Yeah, and the numbers from the initial reports, as we will get more details later, I'm sure, as you said, 38 million or 32 guaranteed. What was it?
32.
32. Thank you. So 32 guaranteed. That's always the biggest, number.
Sure.
And that's over 4 years. So, you divide that up. That's not even, 10 million a year if you want to divide it up in that regard. There was also a part of that where it said 18 million over the first 12 months. So my guess is you're going to count the signing bonus and the base salary in the first year here as how much he's getting, basically money and cash money up front. And that's where that 18 million comes from. I agree with you. I think this is a deal that always to me didn't seem like it was going to be tough, because it didn't seem like the Bills really had to break the bank to keep Khalil. And it wasn't like he had the kind of season or career that he's going to be able to go to market and go to the highest bidder, and it's going to be this outstanding deal. And it feels like he wants to be in Buffalo. It's always been a kind of a good relationship. So I think this just kind of fits that they got this done first. It was always a question, would it be Khalil, Terrell Bernard, Greg Rousseau, James Cook, Christian Benford? And this seems like it was the easiest one to get done out of that group, and it is the first one to get done.
Yeah, and I could also maybe argue that it's the most important one, not to get done, but just the most important player to lock up long term. I think Christian Benford is the best player of the group, but I don't think he's going anywhere either. James Cook is the really interesting one, and I'm sure we'll talk about that. Khalil Shakir has been incredibly reliable for them. And for an offense that doesn't have a true number one, I do not think that this changes my mindset about the offseason. They're still going to go out and try and get a receiver in some capacity. But I think they really like the idea of having just a legitimate, good, solid, reliable number two who is available under contract for the next several seasons. And like I said, he's only 25 years old. I mean, through the 2029 season, we are talking about a player who is going to be in the prime over this entire window. I think this could be a contract in a year or two that we look back on and go, wow, what a bargain the Bills got there.
And this is yet another player that takes an ascension from year 2 to year 3 under the Sean McDermott, Brandon Beane regime and era, right? We've seen this from so many guys, Terrell Bernard being one of them.
Yes.
You know, you can go back. I mean, there's been lots of guys over the years who you say their year 2 to year 3 jump was a really good jump. Even James Cook had a really good year 2, and then even took it to another year level in year 3. That's kind of been the MO. These guys get in the program and they, you know, really ascend. And I remember when Khalil Shakir was drafted, and we all thought, okay, this is a nice player. He does a lot of really nice things with the ball in his hands. He could be a little versatile. He can return punts. But when he couldn't get on the field his rookie year, remember, Matt, he was inactive a lot his rookie year. When he couldn't get on the field, it was one of those discussion points from fans up there. They don't play rookies, and what, this guy can't get on the field. Well, here we are 3 years later, and he's become their most consistent and reliable wide receiver.
Yeah, I mean, he had 76 catches in the regular season this past year. That's not nothing.
Yeah,
that's a very good
100
number.
targets, I believe, right?
100 targets, 76 catches, 4 touchdowns. And then once again, he was productive, at least at times in the playoffs. 2 years ago, he was exceptional in the playoffs, you know, that Chiefs game and then the wild card round against the Steelers. I just think that they still think that this is a player that's ascending. I think they think in a lot of ways he's very versatile. Not they think, he is a very versatile player and can do a lot of things. And I feel like in their head, this isn't the perfect comparison, but in their head, I think they're giving Josh Allen the guy like they had with Cole Beasley now for the next several years. You know he's going to be out there. You know he's going to make plays. You know he's going to be available, right? He's more versatile than Cole Beasley. Not quite as effective as Cole Beasley was in that particular role, but just a really solid player. I like this move. Actually, I would go even further. I really like this move for the Bills because I really like the player. I think he's a really good player.
As I mentioned, a few other names who are next up that are going into the last year of their deal. And of course, I think first and foremost on Bills fans' minds is James Cook because of the social media posts and comments and being kind of public about his situation and $15 million a year. That number's been out there from him and his side and standing on, you know, what they want. Brandon Beane, we just asked him about it. I asked him specifically, hey, I know you don't negotiate through the media, but, you know, what's this process? And he basically said, look, you know, we don't do that through he said, Brandon Beane essentially said, business is business. I would prefer to keep business in-house, but James Cook is a grown man and he's going to handle it the best he can. And he loves and respects James Cook. He also said, interestingly enough, just because we're not on the same page today, doesn't mean we won't be in 2 weeks, 2 months, or a year from now. And I guess that's admitting right now, hey, we are not on the same page, but obviously we have a lot of time here to try and figure this out.
Yeah, I agree. I think James Cook is going to be the most difficult one to get done of the group. Maybe that's just my perception of it because he has been publicly talking about it on social media, and the other ones, at least to our knowledge, haven't been as much. Running back is such an interesting position because the philosophy on running backs has always been, or at least for the last several years, it has been, if you got an elite quarterback, you probably shouldn't pay a running back. That's a way of getting yourself in trouble. And then last year, things changed a little bit because of Saquon Barkley, because of Derrick Henry, because of some of the productivity we saw from those guys. My stance on James Cook is, I think, probably closer to the team's stance on James Cook. I think for the
Syracuse,
player,
brother. Hold on, I gotta say hi to my Syracuse guy here. I was like, hold on 1 second. Yeah, 91 and 95. What's your name? Rondé. Oh, Gadsden. Oh my God, Rondé Gadsden. Come here, take a look. I'm doing Bill's podcast right here. Rondé Gadsden, and I gotta tell you, I go on in Miami with your dad. Yeah, he does Miami radio, right? Yeah, so I go on Miami with your dad, Rondé, and I went on the radio and I said to him, true story, Rondé. I went on the radio to do a Bills thing, and I said, I have to tell you, Rondé, I hated you, but I love your son because he played for the Dolphins. Look at this. All right, good luck to you, man. All right, yeah, you had a really great career. I'm glad you stayed at Syracuse for that extra year. Thank you. You got it. Thank you. Good luck to you. You got it. Rondé Gadsden, how about right there? That's pretty cool, isn't it?
If he gets drafted by the Bills, we were the first people to talk to him.
That's right.
So how about that? Good scoop there. Can I
That's
admit
awesome.
something to you?
True story. Yeah, go ahead.
I have no idea who that is.
So Rondé Gadsden Sr. played for the Miami Dolphins, was a beast receiver in the late 90s, early 2000s, I guess. I think it would be early 2000s. And he was, he hurt the Bills a lot. The Bills weren't that great back then.
Mm-hmm.
And his son became a really great high school receiver who went to Syracuse as a receiver. And then he bulked up, he gained weight. He became a tight end later in his career. He had a bad injury last year. But true story, his dad does Miami radio, WQAM down in Miami.
Okay.
And I go on their show sometimes to talk about the Bills. And when I went on 2 years ago with his dad, and I think whoever the other host was, I think Joe Rose maybe. And I said, Rondé, just before we start this interview, I have to tell you something. I hated you when you played for the Dolphins, but man, do I love your son for Syracuse.
That's funny. That's awesome. Yes. Well, there you go. It's a small world in the NFL.
Yes, it is. That was really cool.
World. So the James Cook stuff, I was saying, I feel like I'm closer to the team side than I am to the player side. I always try and put myself in the middle of these things and figure out where I would stand if, I wasn't doing this job or whatever it is. I think that James Cook is probably pretty firm, close to the $14-15 million a year. Mm-hmm. I just don't think I would pay a running back that. If he's willing to go to $12 million a year, then I think the Bills would be like, okay, we'll do it. It's probably even more than they would be willing to pay. I think they would probably be closer to 10 or 11. This is just completely me speculating. But if it's going to take $15 million to get him signed, I don't think the Bills should budge. I really don't.
I don't think so either. I think that number is – and is he getting that in the open market?
No, I don't think so. He's a very, very good running back, and they have glowingly talked about him. But, I mean, to get paid $15 million a year, you have to be in the conversation of being the best running back in the NFL. And I don't think he's that. I think he's a very good running back, somewhere between the 5 and 10 range, as far as where I would say he is. But is he better than Saquon? I don't think so. Is he better than Derrick Henry? No, I don't think so. He's younger. He's got that going for him. But is he better than Bijan? Is he better than Jahmyr Gibbs? Is he better than Christian McCaffrey? I don't. Well,
I know you're not doing this. I don't want to sit here and just downgrade James Cook and talk all about the negative traits, because he is
absolutely
a very big weapon, and he's perfect for what the Bills want, right? He's a guy that can do a lot of things. He also has a very good offensive line in front of him. The machine runs really well with him because of what they want from him, the kind of line that they built. There's no doubt about that. But let's all remember, he has control here. No matter what the Bills offer, he can say, sorry, I'm going to go test my value, and we'll know a year from now if that's the case. Now, Brandon did also say it doesn't mean they can't sign guys, in a few months or in the season, but they don't usually do it in the season. They also have the franchise tag and the transition tag next year, right? The Bills have control in their own right. He doesn't have to sign. The Bills still have control if he has a great year and they want to do that. So we'll see where this goes. But as of right now, I think Brandon Beane's comments were pretty telling that, hey, we're not on the same page. I don't love that he's doing it publicly, but it's okay. I love James, and we're gonna do what we can to try and figure this out.
Let me ask you this, though. Is there anything he could do next year that would make his value higher than it is right now? Is he going to go have another 16 touchdown regular season rushing?
I think that you're right. There's probably nothing. I guess if he had a 1,500 yard season, but how does that happen with Josh Allen throwing the ball? You'd have to have the Bills say we're just going to God forbid Josh Allen got hurt or something, and you have to rely more on the run, right? That would be something like that. But otherwise, I don't think so, no.
Yeah, so that's why, to me, maybe it's the Dawson. I'm not saying Dawson Knox money. I'm saying maybe it's the week or a couple weeks before the season, and they do that. They've done that a handful of times. They see where things stand. They want to do right by the player. But like we've talked about on this podcast, James Cook doesn't make enough money, relatively, to just hold out a ton during training. That's not going to happen.
Right.
He's not going to be sacrificing hundreds of thousands of dollars while he's still on a second round rookie contract running back deal. Like, he's just not going to do that.
No. And this stuff, I think there's the side of it of the fear of like it getting ugly, and that can always happen.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's where Bills fans are right now, which is okay. They know it's another year, but they haven't seen this, right? Like, they haven't seen anything in the Brandon Beane, Sean McDermott era get to a point of it got nasty or ugly. And that's why I think even from the Bills side, they're trying to do everything. Well, Jordan Poyer would like held out of OTAs. That was about it.
Stephon Diggs got pretty ugly
for a day. No, I mean, like, but what I mean is the contract stuff.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
I mean the contract stuff. There's never been a big contract situation under the Brandon Beane era in Buffalo, to be honest with you.
No, they've done a very good job of kind of dealing with their business and honestly not doing it very publicly. Like,
right.
just
there was drama with Stephon, there's no doubt, but it wasn't like over money. Like, it was a lot of other stuff. So I think that's where a lot of the fear comes in from. Like, how do you handle this? And it's actually where a lot of wondering comes in for me. How do you handle this?
Mm-hmm.
If you're the Buffalo Bills. All right, so James Cook is one guy, and then the other guys we talked about, we know Terrell Bernard, Christian Benford, Greg Rousseau. They're all going to be also guys that could possibly have contract extensions. A guy that is coming back in year number 2 is Keon Coleman, and both Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane talked about Keon Coleman, and once again, both had the same sentiment about, listen, he wasn't the same player when he came back from injury. He's a young guy. He kind of has to learn to navigate through all of that. None of them are counting Keon Coleman out. That's not the case. Mm-hmm. But we have heard now twice since about 4 weeks ago and now here at the Combine, the same sentiment about he's got to come back and he's got to show that for a whole year he can play at that level and ascend, and we're expecting him to do that.
Yeah, the one thing I will say, though, is the tone was different. Now, I am in Buffalo. Dom Tibbetts, my colleague, is there for Channel 7 covering the Combine. The tone from Sean was different than the tone from Brandon. The tone from Sean was a bit more stern and a bit more telling. Like, I listened to that press conference, and it was arguably the most notable thing that he said, talking about how Keon Coleman had a rocky rookie season and how he wasn't the player, and he needs to take this upon himself to really elevate himself and become the better player and best version of himself in the second year. Brandon was much more, he's 21 years old. This is totally normal for a player this age. Let's give it some time. I don't want to kill a guy for one bad stretch during his rookie season. But the tone was different, and that to me was noticeable. With Sean, it was harsher than it was with Brandon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you know what's funny to me is I do think it's so interesting that we just talked about James Cook, and now we're talking about Keon Coleman. And Sean kind of talked about James Cook the same way after his rookie year. Uh-huh. He might have not have been as harsh, but there were a lot of generalities about, hey, he's got to be able to. I'd say maybe the best way, like practice, how he approaches practice, how he approaches his career, and getting prepared. And I don't think that James was really where they wanted or needed him to be after his rookie year. And now look at him after year 3, obviously, where Sean cannot stop raving about James Cook and his preparation and his focus. Uh-huh. And that's why I say I think that they understand, they see these things, but it is interesting that it's the same kind of way that Sean talked about James Cook a couple of years ago.
Well, because Sean is the one that's coaching them. Brandon would probably give the benefit of the doubt, considering he's the guy who took him literally less than a year ago. Sean is the one who needs to coach him, and I think probably is also the one maybe trying to push buttons a little bit to get the most out of somebody. I did think I saw his agent. I posted yesterday on X about the comments from Sean McDermott, and his agent quoted it and said he'll be fine, and I rolled my eyes a little bit at that because it's like, in these situations, I don't really think the agents should be talking. Just the player knows if these conversations have been had publicly, they've certainly been had privately. I don't think the agent saying he'll be fine does anything other than just make it even more messy is not the right word, but put more of a spotlight on it.
Right.
I'm expecting a nice bounce back from Keon Coleman. I would not be comfortable with this team going into this season counting on Keon Coleman to be a number 1 wide receiver. I think they still need to find another guy, but I think the cluster of players I'm putting together are somebody who's not on their roster right now, Khalil Shakir, obviously after the payday, and Keon Coleman. Those should be the 3 guys that they are rolling into next season as their quote unquote top 3.
So one of the other things that happened here this week at the NFL Combine is the Bills have confirmed via Sean McDermott coaching staff changes. And we had reports over the last several weeks that Matthew Smiley was out as special teams coordinator. We know that's the case now. It's confirmed by the team. Chris Tabor is in. Let's start there. We'll get to strength and conditioning in a minute. Sean was asked basically why, or he unprompted brought up the fact that he had said he expected Matthew Smiley to be back when asked about it at the end of the season. He said at that time, that was his answer, but he wanted to take his time to evaluate the position, which to me is understandable. And, right at that moment, they weren't going to move on, but eventually they did. And they looked at it all. And then he gave insight into why he hired Chris Tabor. He said he had followed Chris Tabor for a lot of years. They're about the same age. They've been in this league a while together. And he said he came available. He didn't coach last year, but the one word he used, and I think immediately I knew that this was kind of what they were looking at when they did this, was experience, Matt. I mean, the last two coordinators at that position for the Bills were Heath Farwell and Matthew Smiley, and both were first-time coordinators. Sean McDermott didn't want that again.
Yeah, I mean, you called it, right? It would be like one of those things that if somebody better came available, then the team was going to look into it. I'm not trying to make it seem like it's insignificant, because it's not. But I think Sean McDermott, on his list of priorities, worrying about special teams is so far down that list that if he knows he's got somebody experienced who can just kind of handle their business there, then it's not going to be something. Sean McDermott probably doesn't want to be the one answering special teams questions and faux pas that have happened over and over and over again. And that's what we've seen happen over the last several years. So I think they wanted to find the most experienced person they could there, who has a very impressive resume. I mean, people consider him a top 5 special teams coordinator in the NFL. So, okay, go plug and play. Don't have to worry about it. And then you're probably not really thinking about special teams again until something goes wrong.
Yeah, I don't know. I think he cares more than you say, or believe. I think that this is funny because you and I talk about special teams a lot and how much they matter, but I think Sean, he's so buttoned up in every area, and he knows that those little margins can mean wins or losses in this league. So I don't know if it's as simple as if I can just find somebody better. I think there were too many gaffes this year where maybe it was just trending that way the entire season, and even though he didn't want to do it, he decided, hey, I have to have something better.
Well, that's partially my point. He's so detailed, and some of these little mistakes that have happened, I don't think these are things that he needs to be concerning himself with. And
I understand what you're saying now.
I don't think he needs to be like, hey.
Right. He wants it to take care of itself.
Exactly. Hey, special teams coordinator.
I misunderstood you. Sorry.
Let's make sure. You know what I forgot about, and I thought about again today because I was going back and just doing a little bit of research on stuff. Do you remember the way the Rams game ended when they had 9 players on the field on the last play?
Yes.
I was thinking back to special teams faux pas over the year. Nothing is bigger than 13 seconds, obviously. You have the fake punt.
Well, it's 13 seconds of special teams faux pas. We can argue they should have squibbed it, and I agree with you, but it wasn't but they didn't do anything wrong on special teams. You could just argue they made a bad decision if that's the case. What they did wrong was on defense.
Both, because I don't think they would have even been in that defensive position if they squibbed it. And now all of a sudden there's 7 seconds left instead of 13 seconds left.
I don't disagree. I will say, for the record, I don't know if people know this story. I'll share it here. When they scored, I walked down to Jay Feely, NFL kicker, on the sidelines. And I said, you got a squib, right? He goes, nope. He goes, I would kick it deep. Don't give him a chance to return it. That's what he said to me. So I think we could all, and I agree with you, they should have squibbed it. What I'm saying is, I don't think you have to count that as a mistake on special teams. That could be a mistake on Sean McDermott, though, for sure.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Well, if memory serves me correct, didn't Heath Farwell get let go right after that?
Yes, and there's a lot of debate about why that happened.
It could have been a scapegoat for sure. Regardless, whatever happened with 13 seconds. And then you also have the fake punt. You have the too many guys on the field against the Broncos the year prior.
Yep.
You have all of these different things that have happened, right? I
think 2 fake punts given up this year.
Yeah, right.
And then a block punt for a touchdown this year against the Rams.
Also in the Rams game,
yes.
Right? So a lot of mistakes along the way. I feel like this is his way of trying to make sure that those mistakes
100%.
Stop, becoming a reoccurring issue, because that's what it's been, honestly.
All right. So the other big change is at head strength and conditioning. And Eric Ciano's been with this organization a long time. I think 11 years, how long he's been. And he rose up to be the head strength and conditioning coach. And for the Bills to have a departure from him was really interesting because Sean's really trusted him over the years, and he's been with him for a long time. I think after hearing everything, going back to the end of the season to today, I think there's been too much focus on the conditioning part of strength and conditioning by people. I really believe this comes down to the strength part of the strength and conditioning. I think the Bills feel they're not strong enough. Maybe not strong enough in recovery from injuries. Keon Coleman, maybe not strong enough in players like Dalton Kincaid, where they say he's got to get stronger, and maybe not strong enough at the point of attack. And it doesn't mean that Eric Ciano or his staff did anything wrong. I think they just want a new approach to the strength part, not necessarily the conditioning part.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the analogy I would make to what you're saying is you want somebody who can run as fast as humanly possible for 100 yards. You don't care how fast they can run their 5K or how fast they can run their mile. You want somebody to be able as strong as humanly possible when they're out there on the field, and then you figure out everything. I don't disagree. It to me is very in the weeds. It to me is one of those things that is interesting, but not something that I think will have, at least from my perspective or from a fan's perspective, a massive impact unless things go poorly, unless they don't get his next hire right. I don't think Eric Ciano was somebody that most people probably even were aware worked for the Bills.
Bills fans look at the injury report every week, and it's long. It's got a lot of names. There's a lot of reasons for that goes on in today's NFL. But for the most part, the Bills have been pretty good this year with injuries. They didn't have very few guys on IR. Really, none of their active roster was really on IR most of the year. Just a couple of guys who came off it then. And then they really didn't miss a lot of games. They did have some key misses, obviously, in the Ravens game. You know, we've talked about a few of those. But that's why, for me, I think the injury part was good for the Bills. They did a nice job. This is maybe, to your point too, Matt, this might be more of a long-term results thing. Like, you get in, you get a new program. And for that matter, we don't know who the new head strength and conditioning coach is. We'll find out. They're still going through that process. We do know Eric Ciano's already been hired. He's down in Jacksonville with Matt Edwards, who's the Bills' old assistant defensive line coach, who's also now down in Jacksonville, and he's replaced by Jason Rebrovich, Clarence native, and the Bills have officially announced that he's joining staff, as well as Ryan Nielsen, who's been with Atlanta and Jacksonville, senior defensive assistant, and Mike Pellegrino, the last one I think I want to talk about real quick, who's interesting to me. He comes over from New England, and even Sean said, look, lots of scheme versatility. He's worked with Bill Belichick for a long time. The Bills lost Scott Booker, their Nichols coach in New England. It's kind of a one-for-one trade. Pellegrino comes over. He worked with Bill Belichick for 10 years, basically.
Yeah, I think so. I think of those additions and changes, the most interesting ones to me are Pellegrino and then Ryan Nielsen. I mean, Ryan Nielsen's interesting to me because he has so much experience, and I do think that this is directly we need more out of our defensive line. And that's a little bit of the way Sean talked about it. I know he's not a defensive line coach, but it's like, hey, that's going to be his focus. Get the defensive line to be performing at their absolute peak, because that will help the rest of the defense. And then I also thought it was interesting that Sean kind of downplayed the philosophy shift that we've talked about a little bit on the podcast about, maybe the Bills are going to play more man. Maybe that's why they're bringing in like all of these different layers to it. I just think that listening to Sean, I think he really respected a lot of the things that Bill Belichick did. So getting a part of that coaching tree on his staff, I think will just make them a little bit more well-rounded.
Yeah, no doubt. Anything we've left on the meat on the bone here for anything you heard these guys say?
No, I think my biggest takeaways are definitely about James Cook, because I think that's very interesting, and I think that's something a lot of people are interested in. I think the coaching stuff was important to address, and then obviously Khalil was the big story of the day. We'll end with this. Who would be the next player to get an extension if they're going to do another one?
Right. Yeah, I thought about
Benford.
I think so, yeah.
I think so too. I think those to me were always the first two that made the most sense.
Well, listen, Brandon gave some pretty good insight on this. He said, you can't talk with everybody at once. You don't want a lot of that going on, but you got to kind of feel around and where you're close and where you're not. And if you're close with some guys, you start to get there. And when it starts trending there, you get to it. And that's what they did with Khalil. So for that regard, I think about maybe a guy like Terrell Bernard. Because Terrell Bernard might be the easiest one, because middle linebacker, he wants to be in Buffalo, captain, kind of fits. Maybe that's where you go next. Maybe Christian Benford's tougher to do because he's a corner, could be commanding a lot of money. Not really sure about that. I do have one more thing. Go ahead.
And I have a question for you, because this is more in your wheelhouse than in my wheelhouse. a lot of people will throw out the term like, oh, somebody got extended. How does that open up salary cap space?
Right.
Could you use this as an example? Now, I know we don't know the specifics yet, but could you use this specific Khalil Shakir extension as an example to how this could impact the amount of money they have to spend this season?
So this extension will most likely actually eat more of their salary cap because Khalil Shakir was on the final year of his rookie deal. In fact, let me see. Maybe it won't. I have to go see what was he scheduled to make this year?
He was a 5th round pick.
Yeah, last year of his deal was supposed to be up. They already Spot Track has already updated it, but
yeah,
boy, I would think he's probably going to eat more because you take into account the signing bonus and the first year salary based on this new extension versus last year, his rookie contract in the last year of it. He's probably going to count more. So I don't think you can. Those things will come in the form of a guy like Greg Rousseau. $13 million this year can be totally lowered. And then you can extend him because he's scheduled to make $13 million this year. We could also see something with Josh Allen. We didn't ask Brandon about that. We did ask him about MVP and how cool it was for him to win that. Him and Sean McDermott both talked about it. And I said, listen, I know that you can't mention names or talk about players on other teams, but when you know that there are guys possibly available out there, how does that process work? And of course, I'm thinking of Myles Garrett, Max Crosby, Micah Parsons, guys like that. And Brandon was very interesting. And he said, listen, like we're always having conversations and people probably don't know the ones that we don't make. Like a lot of times there's trades made that we were interested in, but we didn't make it. Like someone decided to trade him to another team for a better offer. Someone decided to trade him out of the conference, but they're always interested in that. Then Jay Skursky, our colleague at the Buffalo News, said, okay, would you be willing to part with a 1st-round pick? And Sean McDermott said,
he was pretty adamant. Brandon. Yeah. He was very adamant.
Absolutely. He said, one thing, I'm not as scared.
Yeah, I love that quote.
I wouldn't flinch.
Yeah. Well, maybe that means that they're sniffing around.
It sounds like at least there's conversations on some level. Although I will tell everybody, Andrew Berry, the GM of the Cleveland Browns today, held firm to say they are not trading Myles Garrett, but we'll see where all of that goes.
It means nothing to me. I know. Absolutely nothing. Of course he was going to say that. He can't give up the leverage that he has currently.
That's right.
He wants teams to be giving them the best possible things that they could get, because then when he trades Myles Garrett in a month and a half, he could be like, hey, we couldn't refuse this offer. We obviously knew Myles wanted to go somewhere else. Makes sense for both of us. Wish him nothing but the best. Of course. I mean, there's no world where he could come out in this press conference today and say, yeah, we know he's unhappy here because our football team, we don't think is going to be very good. So I'm going to definitely move him and we'll just see what offers we could get.
Yeah, so a lot more coming from the Combine this week. The Bills people are done as far as McDermott and Beane. There are other head coaches and GMs that are talking. Nick Sirianni, I think he was asked by either John Scott or Andy Young. I don't know, but they were both over there about being from Jamestown and the Pride, and he had a great response to that. So it was pretty cool. People want to go find that and check it out. And then we've heard from a lot of other people as well today, and there will be tomorrow. And then the prospects start to talk, and then the testing happens later this week.
Beautiful. Enjoy the rest of Indianapolis, sir. I will be holding down the fort here back in Buffalo.
I know you will. And for everybody out there, we'll either do something. Maybe I'll have something over the next day or so if it pops up, or Matt and I will get together later in the week and we'll keep you updated on anything else that's done or said from here in Indianapolis. For our producer, Mike Rabier, thanks a lot for tuning in to It's Always Game Day in Buffalo. Don't forget to watch us on YouTube at Sal Sports. And of course, download, subscribe, throw us a nice rating, review, Apple, iTunes, wherever you pod, Spotify, and of course, the Odyssey app.